Well, hello, everyone. Mike Wallace here with Gary Keller at the Wallace and Keller Show. And, as we always say, we talk racing and stuff. Stuff is everything. Gary's my stuff person. He's a smart guy. He knows all that stuff. I know a little bit about racing. So we'll start there. Gary, how about, I don't know if you got to pay attention to all 3 days of racing out in San Diego at the naval base. That was a big deal over the weekend. We went everywhere from good races to chaos on the racetrack to even a manhole cover that didn't get welded down and went through the grill of Corey Day's truck on the first lap of the O'Reilly Auto Parts race.
Right. That happened in Las Vegas during the Formula One race, remember?
Yeah,
Same thing happened on the
the
inaugural.
crazy part about it, I heard Tommy Baldwin. Tommy Baldwin's a former car owner. He's a crew chief, and he's on that Dale Jr. download thing. And he said today, he says they were walking the racetrack the other day and seen somebody had put tape on the ground and said weld, but it hadn't been welded up. And he said, I never thought about saying anything to anybody else. And he says, hell, we seen it before it ever happened.
Yeah. They had great attendance, all three races. It seemed like they drew from a good part of the state of California. I was impressed with that. Do you think the track was too long, Mike, as for a road course? Because normally you're what, 2.5 miles?
Yeah, I talked to two people today, Gary, that are business people in the racing industry. They were still in San Diego this morning. They said, as far as they're concerned, and they're not NASCAR, right? It's not a NASCAR person, just people. And they had 27 family members from the area with them. They said they had an absolute blast. It was a great time. There was a little chaos, which really shocked me when I heard it, is that the concession lines in certain areas were backed up horribly bad. Wasn't enough food and drinks and all that. He says, you expect that to happen at a totally new promoter venue. But he says, I says, well, okay, let's just sum it up this way. Would you consider it a success? He said, unequivocally, yes. He said, it was a great time. And
Yeah.
so I was excited for the industry to hear that. And I wasn't sure how it was going to all play out. I watched the races, pieces of them all. Boy, that racetrack gave them drivers some challenge, man. They had Humpty Doos in the back straightaway and flew through there.
Yeah.
But it was unique. It was different. And I really liked the biggest part that a lot of people talked about. The reason it was held on the naval base, and I think it was kind of got hid behind a lot of the facts. It was a celebration of the United States of America 250th birthday. And it was
Absolutely.
what's more American than racing in the
Yeah.
military, so really
It, it,
cool.
was, it was finally good to see NASCAR got it right, in my opinion, and apparently in your opinion too. It was amazing by the fact that, I mean, let's face it, I don't mean to pull any punches here, but I don't think Ben Kennedy has had very much success with the choices that he's made for NASCAR. And I'm not so sure that he was the one that made him, but the Coliseum was a catastrophe. You and I know that. You know, uh, I don't know about Chicago, but they're going back to Chicagoland apparently. You know,
Yeah, I think they'll get back to real good reality there. I always liked Chicagoland. I thought it was a nice racetrack. It's going to look totally different now when everybody shows up this year because there's industrial buildings built everywhere around that used to be parking lots.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a question to ask Mike Wallace. You and I were at Chicagoland one year, and we were sitting there talking, you and I and Kenny Hendrick. I can't remember who else was there. I think maybe even Kenny may have been there with us too. But all of a sudden, a storm was brewing up. You know what?
The Tropicana Ball.
That's it. That was
I didn't mean
class.
to, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were going to ask, but man, that was crazy. Tell people what happened there.
Well, yeah, we're just kind of sitting there, and I can't remember if it was Kenny or Rusty or somebody, but they said, I'm getting the hell out of here. There's going to be a storm. And I said, no, it's okay. It's not going to happen. We're not going to get any rain or any storm. Next thing I know, we turned around and you had already left, and I stood there with Kenny. And I turned around and looked, and here that damn, off that pedestal, that big orange came down it was coming down the front stretch. It was amazing, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, well, the race was sponsored by Tropicana Orange Juice. It was a Tropicana 400, if I remember right. And that was happening like qualifying or something like that. And end result, people, you got to imagine this. We're sitting on pit road. We're looking towards the grandstands, right? We're just kind of staring out. Yeah, I mean, it's getting black. It's getting black outside. The
Thick.
racing, the practice, our qualifying had been put on a pause. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, I guarantee you that thing had to be, what, 25 feet in diameter at least, Gary? I mean,
Yeah,
it was a big old demo ball,
it
orange that
it
they
covered
used.
most of the front stretch,
Yeah.
and then it just started raining beat hell. It was crazy. But if ladies and gentlemen, if you wanna look that up, you can look it up on Google, and they'll show you. It's just amazing. It was an amazing thing. One of the most memorable things that I think I ever saw being involved in NASCAR. Crazy things. And we've seen a lot of crazy things, haven't we?
Yeah. What's your best memory? The Tropicana ball blowing down Chicagoland Speedway in the front
Yeah.
straightaway.
Oh, that was wonderful. I gotta ask you one thing. You know, people don't really realize what people that are involved in NASCAR, what they go through with a schedule. It's grueling as hell. You get off a plane, you stick around home for a couple days, you take off, get on a plane, fly somewhere else. This goes on for what, 36 weeks? Tell me about it as a driver. I mean, I did it as an owner, but not to the magnitude that you did.
Well, to be honest with you, Gary, it is it's a hectic. It's kind of a carny lifestyle. I mean, carny like a carnival. You're traveling from one town to another. I was talking with some good friends the other day. We were talking about how we screwed up early in life. That we ended up in all these towns all around the United States of America, but we never spent any time in them. It was a thrash to the airport, to the racetrack, back home again. So let's just take a typical week. And since COVID, right? I'm going to give you pre-COVID. Now I'm going to give you then post-COVID. So pre-COVID, we used to practice a lot at the racetrack. So everything would start on Friday morning. So you'd leave Concord, North Carolina, and you'd fly primarily. I mean, some places you drove to, but primarily you flew into a town and you'd spend Thursday night. In our situation, we had a motorhome in the driver's motorhome lot most of my career. But everybody else would be in a hotel or the crew guys and all that. Friday morning, you're up first thing in the morning. The crews are up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I like to include the crews because the crews do. They're the kind of the unsung heroes. Everybody hears about the driver and what they do, but the crews are the guys that make everything happen, and the truck drivers and up at 5 in the morning at the racetrack, pit road. Pit area opens at 6 o'clock. Drivers show up a little bit later. We used to practice for a couple hours, and we'd qualify. We used to even come back on Saturday mornings and qualify for second round. I don't know if you remember second round qualifying, Gary. That was what I call back in the day. And
Yeah.
then we'd race and we'd turn around and come home. You try to get to the airport as fast as you can. Kenny Schrader was the ultimate in getting him and Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt would always leave the racetrack in his uniform. He'd get out of the car. His wife would have, and his coach driver would have a police escort lined up. They'd blast him to the racetrack or, from the racetrack
To
home.
the
Schrader, he used to carry a little dirt bike, like a 250cc dirt bike on his motorhome, and he would hop out, change clothes, hop on the dirt bike, and haul the mail to the airport and tell his coach driver to pick it up at the airport. Did that for years. We just got rides with people or had rental cars, and the best race the whole weekend was watching everybody leave the racetrack trying to get
Sure.
home. But you roll home on Sunday nights, and then Monday morning, you're normally having to reach out to the team to discuss a little debrief of how you ran over the weekend. Or there was a lot more than there is today. A lot of sponsor commitments. You had to do appearances. You might have to be somewhere on Tuesday. They let you come home Monday and spend a little time with your family, and then you got to be back on the road doing appearances. I did a lot of stuff for Heilig Myers Furniture back in the day when I was cup racing, and
How about Geico? When you
yeah,
landed that,
you know what? Geico was one of the, in all honesty, Gary, that was the simplest sponsor I ever had in my life.
is that right?
They put their name on the race car, and they built a very cool nationwide television commercials. We spent probably a week, maybe 10 days out in LA early in the year filming all these commercials. And then about half a dozen times a year, they would ask me to go to what they call their call centers, where, Geico agents, San Diego, right where they raced at. There's a big Geico call center out there, Buffalo, New York, Minneapolis, but I would go and I would walk through the facility. Totally different than working with customers. I'd work with employees and just go through and say hello. I'd sit down and I'd answer a few phone calls now and then. Somebody call in for a Geico quote, and you got to start the conversation all funny and
Mhm.
not let them know who you are, but ask them if they're a NASCAR fan. If they say no, you hand the phone to somebody else, and
Yeah,
but
I hear you. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
there's so many personalities that we've seen over the years that I think the actual fan probably doesn't realize what it's like. I mean, you said earlier in the conversation, like a carny. We were all kind of like carnies in a way. I mean, I look back at some of the personalities back in the old Bush days. I mean, I love the time when the Bush was the main sponsor of the series. At the end of the race, they'd always have a case of beer up laying up on your motorhome. Remember those days?
Yeah, yeah, it's Gary, let me share this past Saturday night. I went to Orange County Speedway, Rougemont, North Carolina, to watch my daughter Chrissy race. And we'll fast forward, she won both feature events, so it was a big deal. But I raced there. People that were at the racetrack brought it up to me. I raced there in the Busch Series in 1994.
Really?
A lady had a news clipping that she brought out of the office, had my name in it as, part of the who was at the racetrack. 1994.
Did you
And
autograph it?
yeah, it was so much fun going up there Saturday night because it's a little short track and it's 2 hours from my home, but, and it's called Orange County Speedway or OCS is
Yeah,
what's all rode around there, but, when you're talking about that case of beer, I remember places they used to have, like, what do you call a cattle water trough? Those big things that and they just used to fill that baby with ice and throw beer in it. Everybody'd throw a case of beer in it, and
yeah,
the ones
yeah.
that could survive the strongest at the end of the night or in the morning left.
I remember Indianapolis at the urinals. They always had the trowels. You felt like you were cattle stampeding or something. If you
Yeah,
had to take a leak, you went into the trowels. You didn't have that
yeah.
a urinal.
Funny story there. I gotta tell this story just because you said that, and this was we didn't talk about this before, so, this is a Dale Earnhardt story, and I know it's been a long time since Dale Earnhardt's been around, but him and I, the whole field raced at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park. We were running the Brickyard 400 also, but we went over right I actually won that Saturday night. I drove the 9 car. And somehow Earnhardt and I, swear to God, truthful story as can be. I'm not ad-libbing at all. We both walk in, and IRP's got real old, nasty bathrooms in the infield, right? They're nothing fancy like for the fans. And for a guy's bathroom, you used to pee in a floor trough, right?
Yeah,
It's Anybody doesn't know that, probably more information anybody needs. All us old guys know that. But so Earnhardt and I end up in there exactly the same time. And we're just kind of BSing walking in the door and we start doing our deal. And oh my God, there's this race fan that come in, right?
Lord.
Swear to God, this is exactly true. Earnhardt's doing his deal. I'm saying this race fan is just so excited to meet Dale Earnhardt, even though we're in the restroom in the infield at IRP. And he says, "Can I shake your hand?" Right? Like he's holding this thing and "Can I shake your hand?"
Yeah.
And Earnhardt took his right elbow. He nudged my left arm
Ha.
and he turned around and he shook that man's hand. The whole time he's peeing all over the guy's leg. And that guy was thrilled to death. And we
Yeah.
walk out here, he goes, "Don't you tell anybody I did that." So
That's
it
right.
was Yeah,
Yeah.
you had to be there to appreciate it because it was funnier, but that fan was it didn't matter, man. He was thrilled to death.
Through the desk, get a little bit of piss on his hands from Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah,
That's
well,
class.
it was certainly on his leg, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about Morgan Shepherd? I mean, back in the day, Morgan was a little bit younger, and I don't know if Morgan's still alive or not, but I knew he had a stroke, I think. But I remember the days when he used to skate around the infield. Remember?
He did,
It
he
was
used to roller skate, he'd show up at the racetrack.
and
He was
rollers.
yes, he is first of all, Morgan is still alive. He was recently on the Dale Jr. download.
Was he really?
I ran into his daughter, Charlotte. Lindsay and I were at Charlotte, and she came up and she was saying he wasn't doing well. You know, he's had some struggles, but he was good enough to be on the download show with Junior, and he was telling him about his roller skating, how that kept him active. That was a way that he could just cruise around. And for people that don't know exactly how you're talking about, Morgan, you know, was a racer, a good racer, won races, and he used to come out on the front straightaway pre-race in a pair of roller skates, and he'd skate down the racetrack or he'd skate up and down pit road, and he wouldn't think nothing of it. It wasn't like he was on display or trying to put on an act for anybody.
Yeah,
He was just doing it and being
he's
Morgan.
a gentleman. He was a pro. He was a pro at it. I mean, he could have been on what was the skating show where they go
Roller
beat the
derby.
roller derby. Absolutely. Morgan would have been great at that. He was great. And then he'd always grab his wife and do some kind of
Yes,
silhouette
just
with
spin
her.
her around, give her a little
Yeah.
ballet did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
As
it's
good a
the
racer he is, everybody remember him as much from his roller skating as he did his racing.
but you said something. Morgan in the day was a hell of a driver. I remember seeing the picture of the top drivers back in the 60s and 70s. Jeff Bodine, Morgan, Rusty. I mean, list goes on, and he was there. Morgan was amazing.
Well, he was certainly a talent. And I remember this is a what I call a good Morgan story. Even though, like, I know Morgan. We know each other. It's not like we know each other well. 1994, I'm driving for Junie Don Levy. Morgan's driving for the Wood Brothers. Well, I didn't know this, and Junie's team had never got it. They called it the Virginia Cup. It used to travel between those two trailers. Those were the only 2 teams out of Virginia that ran the Cup Series on a weekly basis, the Wood Brothers and Judy Don Levy Racing.
That's it.
And we ran 4th. I that was the first year I drove for Judy, and I run 4th at Atlanta, the last race of the year. And it was such a memorable deal because it wasn't that we finished 4th, it's that the Virginia Cup got to go to Junie's trailer. After being in the Wood Brothers trailer all these years, it finally changed homes for a race. And it was only a race because Morgan ended up, beating us again pretty quickly thereafter. But
Yeah.
good stories back in the day, Gary. There's
They were.
a
I'm,
lot of
I'm
old
glad.
sit around and talk about things. And
I caught the tail end of it, Mike, to be honest with you. But, I mean, I came into it, in 2001, 2002. But, the first car I bought, our first ARCA race, I purchased it from the Wood Brothers. And I remember driving up there in Virginia. I thought, where in the hell am I at?
yeah,
It was, it was not an easy trip up there, man.
yeah, Stewart, Virginia.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yeah.
Virginia. It's really surprising that you bring up the Wood Brothers, or we bring up the Wood Brothers, because it's the most iconic team in NASCAR. It's been around forever. It's the longest. They just made a big announcement this year. They're going to have the Love Boy that's driving for Richard Childress. He's going to go drive that car starting next year. They're always announced that Josh Berry's not coming back, but a friend of mine called me, and him and Leonard Wood are buddies. And he invited Leonard. He said, "Hey, why don't you come by the museum? I'm up here hanging out, not doing much." And so I got a phone call when I was at Pocono and says, "Hey, if I fly into Charlotte, will you ride up to the Wood Brothers museum with me? Leonard's going to show me around." I said, "Well, hell yeah." I was there one time in my life, brief meeting with them all, but it'd be fun to go back there. I hear of all the great stories. If you're ever in Stewart, Virginia, folks, stop by the Wood Brothers Museum. It's NASCAR 101 iconic. And
Hmm.
Leonard Wood is hanging around there because he was the brains and innovator of a lot of the stuff, the David Pearson era of life that went on up there.
Very unique personality of a team. They always made their presence well known. Had some great drivers over the years. Bill Elliott drove for him for a while, didn't he?
I'm not sure about Elliott. I know, that Kyle Petty drove for him. Of course, David Pearson, Cal Yarborough, all that back in the day. And, Trevor Baynes drove and won the Daytona 500. Harrison Burton drove the car and won a cup race. They
Course.
haven't won many races lately, but they're very, very, and it came out, I guess, over the weekend that they're highly connected to Penske Racing. Penske
Hmm.
Racing basically prepares their cars now. John Wood, the young boy, is the president of Wood Brothers Racing, and he's an out there thinker. You ever watch his Facebook postings? He comes up with some of the silliest stuff, and it's like, you're running that race team? He talks about fertilizer and coaching his kids' ball team and just funny stuff. It's all good.
think he's only 32 years old, maybe.
He's a
Very
young man. You know, he used to race. He raced the truck series, won a race
yeah,
or two, and
I remember him hanging out the track, you know? Those were the days. I mean, good crowds. It seemed like and I'm not saying anything bad about the fan of this day and age, but fans back in the day, man, they were loyal as hell.
Gary, I've talked to a lot of people because I hear the story that back in the day, or it used to be. I said, stop right there. I said, I'm being serious. Okay, these are all the same racetracks, primarily the same surfaces, might have been repaved, but basically all that. What do you mean back in the day? What do you mean it used to be that way? And I ask people, and what I come down to find out is that our sport now, and I call it our sport, it's your sport. We all contributed to it, and we all think we got something out of it. We hope we do. We're talking about it. You and I talked about it, and it's just they're used to the race only being consumed, meaning you could only watch it if you went to the racetrack or you watched it at 1 o'clock on Sunday, or Saturday, whatever. It wasn't streamed on this and scanned on this and all the different ways of getting in. It was only on one or two networks. It wasn't on four different networks throughout the year. And I
Never had
kind
to
of figure out
guess.
that's what everybody means by it used to be. It used to be. So, but we started the show off talking about the San Diego race and the people I talked to today, and I'm really glad to hear, the back in the day, if you want to call it, is coming back. People are showing up at the racetracks. There are good fan attendance live at the tracks, and the races are for the most part all pretty good. I was surprised. I'll tell you what I was surprised about. Jimmy Johnson came out this weekend
I
and
read
made
the
it
article.
very clear
I
he did not.
sent to you. I
Yeah,
sent you
he
the
did not
article.
like what is the lack of driver etiquette going on right now. That's you sent it to me, and then
Yeah.
Jimmy
What do you
Johnson,
what do you
seven-time
think?
champion.
Tell me what you think about that.
Well, I think he's telling absolutely the truth. We know that, right? But I am glad he came out. He's a seven-time champion, the master of sportsmanship to the fullest as a driver. Give respect, get respect back. I mean, back in the day, and there we go. Back in the day, you would race people with respect. And what that would mean is if a driver, Jimmy Hensley, the great driver from Virginia, taught me when I first got into the Busch Series. And if I may say, with that, they used to call him the Virginia gentleman, Jimmy Hensley, because he'd have that draw to him. And I can't do it, a little southern draw, mountain draw. And he goes, Mike, I'm going to tell you how this works in this NASCAR racing. He says, if you look in your mirror, which you do about every lap, he says, and all of a sudden you don't see anybody behind you. He says, a few laps later, you see me on your rear bumper. That means I'm damn faster than you are. Get out of my way. And the deal was move over and you then get your car better. And then you go back and race them and they will give you the same respect back. Well,
Yeah.
what happens now? And Jimmy brought it out. These kids race you every lap as hard as they can. They beat on you. They tear stuff up. And as you, as a car owner, know, that fixing a race car is too damn expensive. I mean,
Oh my
and it
god.
takes too much time, and smaller teams don't have big inventories of people or cars, and it's just stupid to race that way. And I
Terrible
call out every one of those young drivers that some of them race like complete idiots.
yeah.
And
Terrible scenario. I
yeah,
mean, when you lose a race car, it is damaged. I mean, you're sick to your stomach as an owner. But
yeah,
getting back to the difference in the drivers. I used to watch you and how you were so attentive to the fan. You made yourself available. Rusty did too. Kenny did. The era of the NASCAR driver back then made themselves available to the fan. Doesn't happen this day and age with this group. Doesn't happen,
Gary,
Mike.
all I can tell you, you and I've known each other a long time. I consider us really good friends, and I think you know how much I appreciate the opportunity I had driving a race car. I'm a kid from Missouri, right? Right outside of St. Louis, Missouri, Arnold, Missouri. My dad did it as a hobby, but nothing for making a living or anything like that. NASCAR was the farthest thing from our mind, thinking we could ever have that opportunity. And then you get a chance to do it. Man, you got to be appreciative. You got to be thankful. You think about people came and spent whatever money, skip the money side, the time it takes. If you gave everybody a free pass to the racetrack, it still takes you all day to go,
Yes.
and for them to want to watch you and come and say thank you and ask for an autograph,
Yeah.
that was always a thing to see. And it still amazes me today, people that ask for autographs, and I ask people now, well, why do you want an autograph? And it's, well, it makes it real. It makes I met you real,
Mhm.
and it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go back and you use that term back in the day, but if ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, go back to the episode of the history of the Wallace brothers. I think it was the second or third segment that we did, Mike, and you explained, your the beginning of your dad Russ, and of Rusty, and Kenny being a crew chief. I mean, the history of the Wallace boys. It was a great story, great show.
Yeah, I'm really happy, Gary. As of recent, I don't know what's prompted it. I really don't, but we've got a lot of attention. Our family has got a lot of attention in the last 6 months to a year of our contributions to the sport. That we've all been involved at different levels. We've all had a degree of success. We were all, concerned about the race fan and the series. And, along the way, a lot of people don't,
Yeah,
tell you that. And you don't think anybody really pays attention. But I'm really happy with what's been going
yeah.
on.
Gosh damn, I remember when we ran a bush race in St. Louis, and hell, they should have just named it the Wallace 300.
It was a Wallace Family Tribute 250, baby. I remember that. I finished
Oh,
second.
250,
And that
that's
was
right.
one of many races in St.
Oh
Louis.
my
But that
gosh.
was,
It
that
was
was a
just
special
all
race.
about Wallace, all about the Wallace brothers, and I'll tell you, they love you in St. Louis. All you
It's a town we grew up in, went to school at Arnold, Missouri, Fox C6 school district. The town was good to us. My brother Kenny lives back in St. Louis. He loves it because that's where he grew up. And,
sure. Yeah.
we all have a little bit of family, more so on my wife's side or was Carla's side of the family back there. But, St. Louis is a cool town. It's a
Yeah.
gateway to the West, as they call it. And,
Home is where the heart is. There's a lot of
yeah,
merit to that. You know,
but,
you
hey,
know,
let me ask you something, Gary. Well, I start the show and we talk about racing and stuff. And we've
stuff.
been talking a lot about racing, or the whole half of this, the front side of the show. But tell me that you did, and if you didn't, tell me you didn't. But man, did you watch the UFC fight from the White House last
Amazing.
Sunday night after Pocono?
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited about that. I guess because, as you know, and you and I have talked about, I've got to know some of those political figures up in Washington, and it's it was like just a spectacular event. It's so
Yes.
patriotic, and I was thrilled. I've read some negative comments, and it's like, people, what the hell are you thinking? I mean, this was fun. It was exciting. All the
It
people in the military dressed in their military clothing, and
it was
I call it
great.
dressed to the tens, in uniform. It was great.
It was great, but, this week they came out, or basically the end of last week, about the conspiracy, of the people. There was like 9 people involved, and they were gonna fly drones over and bomb. Have you heard about that?
I heard it very much in
Yeah.
depth. I've
And it was a ring, and they've gotten like 14 people that were involved. They would have pulled this off if it had not been for the mother of one of them who suspected foul play, and she contacted the FBI. Your old buddy Cash Patel.
Yeah, well, Cash and I have become, I consider us good friends, or friend. Let's just say friends. Would
Yes.
categorize it. He returns my call if I send it to him or text to him, and vice versa. So I can, and man, he's on it. He's got his whole
Yeah.
team. He's got the whole FBI that they're
Yeah.
not putting up with any of this crap anymore, Gary. So if they're hearing anything, and thank God to the mother of the
Yeah.
one weirdo,
You
one
think
of the
about
weirdos.
if this mother had not, I mean, they would have bombed, the drones, and they had a conspiracy lined up that was a mile long. I was reading an
Yeah,
article today. I mean, it's some
they were
crazy.
saying they were gonna fly them drones into buildings, bomb them, but that wasn't the master plan. The master plan was to have people with long rifles or machine guns sitting outside, and when everybody tried to run out of the facility, they just start shooting them all.
Crazy.
It's gonna be a mass killing, but, fortunately, it got foiled, and, thank God they, I'll echo Cash's statements. Donald J. Trump provides us with all the resources we need now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finally. Listen, I want to go back to I talked to you earlier before the show started. I was real curious about the Strait of Hormuz and could not figure out how we could not take them out. And it's a very difficult thing to end this war. Number one, the strait is only 21 miles. I say only, but it's only 21 miles. The narrow part is 21 miles in width. And there's only so much of the area of the 21 miles that are dredged deep enough for the actual ships to go through. Iran, unfortunately, has put all their eggs kind of in one basket per se. All the drones, all the missiles, they're congregated around the Strait of Hormuz. So they've put landmines all around. I mean, it's a mess. I don't know if Trump's going to have to just take them out. The actual Navy, what's left of it there at the Strait of Hormuz, to get this deal done. But it's not as easy as people thought. I couldn't understand how come they just couldn't go in and take care of it. It's a very difficult, complex deal.
Yeah, well, and you pay more attention to those things than I do, but what I've heard and understand is that, along with the country of Iran, we're dealing with different factions because nobody really knows who's running the place anymore.
They don't.
You got the old leader, you got what is the IRC or RIC, whatever, the military side of it. You and I are normal people, Gary. We have compassion, we have feelings. There's people in this world that have no feelings for human beings. They could
No,
care less.
they kill.
And they just kill and do what I call stupid stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't think there's a soul in this world, in at least, let me rephrase that, a soul in my network, my social ingredient of people that want to see war. Nobody likes them. There's nothing good. They always say business is better during an uptick in the economy, all that stuff. But when you're talking about, you know, killing people off, that's pretty damn serious. That's pretty permanent. That's not funny at all.
No.
But that damn East has been arguing about that stuff. I had the privilege back in December of 2003. I've told you this story before, but to make it public, I went to Iraq and Afghanistan and Bahrain and all that over there with General Myers. He was the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff.
Did you
And the
really?
late great Robin Williams was on the trip with us for a week. And those guys educated me. Robin Williams and General Myers educated me so much. Those people just love to fight. It's all over fake religions and all this type of stuff. And they just
They
do it.
love
They won't quit. They just won't stop. And life doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah.
So,
The Iranian people have to take a stand. There's strength in numbers, as you and I know, and I know they're getting slaughtered, and I know they're getting killed, but they have to take some kind of they have to reach down and grab some backbone here. I mean, Donald Trump told them that we would be back, and we came back. We've
yeah.
done our part, but the actual regime has to end. The people have to take over the way I see it.
Yeah. So, what I understand, Gary, and when I use the word I understand, this, of course, this is what some people in the network of people I know told me. The citizens over there are good people. There's a lot of wackos, but what they got to do, they got to get arms. They got to have military arms that they can defend against this crazy military that's over there and stand up and revolt against them.
Yeah.
They claim, the people I know tell me that's the only way it will ever really fix itself is when they finally can push back, but they don't have enough power to push back right now. And
Yeah,
so I
I
guess
think you're
we'll
right.
see how that goes. How
Makes you
about
want
the ruler of the UK resigned today, huh? Do
yeah,
you see that?
yeah, you got tired of all the
What is that what
negative.
happened? I didn't know what happened there. It was like all of a sudden, bam, retired.
He caught hell every week, and he just finally said, "Folks, I'm gone." I mean, let's face it. What is it? Four out of the last six have withdrawn from
Really?
Parliament over there. I mean, think about it. I mean, you know the way they do government over there. I mean, if they don't like you, they're going to boo your ass. You know, it's a different world over there. So I don't know. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Mike and Gary, we're back. We got a lot of stories to tell. We'll keep you up to date on some of the old time racing. We'll keep you up to date on some of the newer type racing as well. And we'll talk about stuff. And Mike, I thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Well, I appreciate that, Gary. We're everything's good. And a closing note: a lot of people don't know this, but a big event this weekend. Mike Wallace is going to run a pro late model at
Are you?
Anderson, South Carolina. Officially verdict this morning. The car is done. It's one of Matt's former Hampke cars, but it's. I've been piddling with it for about a month. I put a new motor in it up there in Ohio. Dale Francis built me a motor for the thing, and so IHRA's got this new stock car series. The drag race series got a stock car series, and so big return on Saturday night.
I'll keep up. I'll
All
keep up.
right,
I love you, Mike. Have a good night.
all
Ladies and
right,
gentlemen, we're
everybody.
going to sign off. Thank you. We'll see you next week.